Welcome to The Story. I'm David Molko in for Pat Doris tonight. Now, we have spent a lot of time focusing on Oregon's criminal justice system over the past couple of years, specifically police and prosecutors. But there is another strand of the story, one that is often overlooked in this conversation, and that is the shortage of public defenders. Now, Oregon is the only state in the nation to exclusively use contractors rather than public sector workers in its system. And simply put, there are not enough lawyers to do the job. As a result, right now there are more than 1,000 criminal defendants statewide who do not have legal representation, even though the Constitution guarantees it. And that is why it is tonight's big story. So as you're watching this, you might be wondering, why should I care? I haven't committed a crime. I don't know anyone who has. So why does this matter to me? Well, broadly speaking, this is something that should matter to all Oregonians, to all people, because cases are being pushed back and justice, whether that is for the accused or their victims, is being delayed. And as we've also seen in some instances, defendants charged with serious crimes and awaiting trial are sometimes released simply because they do not have a lawyer. So to better understand these challenges, investigative reporter Kyle Iboshi talked to people directly affected. We're going to hear from the victims and the public defenders doing this critical work a bit later in the week. Though tonight we begin by focusing on underrepresented defendants, including some who face a difficult choice: wait in jail for who knows how long, or try to represent themselves.
Will Deweese admits he's outmatched. It's not a fair fight. The 43-year-old handyman has no legal training or law degree. Yet for 3 weeks, Deweese sat in the Washington County Jail on burglary and theft charges with no lawyer. He was on his own to challenge prosecutors and navigate a complex legal system.
You don't know what's happening because they're speaking in a language that, unless you're trained, you don't know what it means, and they don't take the time to explain it.
Statewide, there are nearly 1,300 criminal defendants without legal representation. They haven't been appointed a lawyer.
You have a constitutional right to have representation.
Yes, sir.
You're not getting it?
No, sir.
What does that mean?
It means I'm scared. It means I'm nervous. I'm being pushed through the system.
The state's public defender system, which provides lawyers for those who can't afford them, has been underfunded for decades. But a backlog of cases from the pandemic has pushed it to a breaking point.
We are at a crisis in our public defense system.
In Multnomah County, defendants are routinely arraigned and then have their hearing dates postponed in hopes a public defender will be available several weeks later.
I went to court like 5 times and they're like, nope, no attorney for you.
Eric Lane, who's facing a single count of felon in possession of a firearm in Washington County, got so fed up waiting for a public defender that he decided to act as his own attorney.
So I've been here since July 27th. I went 40 days without an attorney, and I was like, out of desperation, I said, can I represent myself?
A week later, Lane withdrew his request for self-representation after realizing it was just too hard to get case files and review evidence in jail. Not to mention, he was in over his head.
I'm like desperate for help.
Not having legal representation right after an arrest can cause a cascade of problems for criminal defendants. Evidence can be lost or erased, and witnesses may become difficult to track down.
What have you lost in not having representation in these initial few weeks of your case?
You make me cry. I've lost time with my kids, time with my mom.
Deweese believes he would have been released from jail sooner if he had a lawyer. He worries about his 2 children, missing work, and unpaid bills.
The toll is heavy, man. The price is heavy. It's me not being there to work and help and take care of the family in all the ways I normally do. It makes it 10 times harder for everybody else.
On October 5th, Deweese finally got a lawyer. A judge appointed him a public defender nearly 3 weeks after his arrest.
Obviously, I've made mistakes. I'm here, but I'm not a bad guy. I'm not hurting people. I have nothing bad on my record, and You know, I just want to go home like anybody else. I just want to go home.
Worth noting, Will Deweese was released from jail a week before last. And again, he's got a public defender, which he certainly should have had from day one.
I mean, it's great to hear these personal stories here. My initial thought, I'd jump right to the Sixth Amendment of the Bill of Rights, right? And also the Miranda rights that police read people when they are arrested, saying you have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one, one will be provided to you. That is not happening, at least not on a timely basis here. Does Will Deweese have any other options other than waiting in jail or, you know, trying to do this himself?
That's the challenge for defendants like this. I mean, these are low-income, poor defendants who don't have the money to go out and hire their own attorney. And so they're really stuck, and they're relying on the state to appoint counsel on their behalf to represent them. And in this case, there just isn't that. This isn't happening.
Yeah, so the short answer there is no. This was the defendant side of things. This is a three-parter. So what's next, Kyle? Yeah,
and this story itself, the public defender shortage, has been well covered, really from the 30,000-foot view. What we wanted to do is get in and hear individual stories from people who were directly impacted here. So again, today, the unrepresented defendant, tomorrow, the crime victim. And that's a story we really haven't heard a lot of. Individuals who may have had a crime committed against them. And unfortunately, the defendant, while arrested, are released shortly thereafter from jail. And so for victims, it can be re-traumatizing, really difficult for them. Also kind of erode faith in the criminal justice system. So we'll hear from crime victims next. And then on Wednesday, the public defenders. A public defender is really working hard as best he can to do the job that he wants to do.
Within the system as it exists. Right?
Exactly. And unfortunately, there just aren't enough hours in the day and not enough lawyers to go around. So we'll hear from him and get that perspective as well.
And I should also mention, too, last week in our governor's debate with the Oregonian, we heard from all three main candidates for governor who said this system needs to change. Thanks, Kyle. All right, looking forward to part two of that tomorrow. Let's get to the latest on our homeless crisis now. At the end of last week, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler announced a major plan to address homelessness, arguably the most significant proposed step by City Hall in years, and one with a goal of banning unsanctioned camping across the entire city. A quick note here. We hear from you, our viewers, in some shape or form just about every day about some tentacle of this crisis, not to paint any population with a broad brush, right? But whether it is camping or mental health or drug use or crime, the message that has come through from you to us is that you are fed up. You're looking for both change and solutions. And that is a message that's not just coming from Portlanders who live here, but we're also hearing from business owners who haven't waited for that change before they've moved on and out, as well as others who say it is long overdue. So Blair Best took the mayor's proposal out to them to see if it impacts their plans to stick around.
The mayor's plan to address homelessness comes after dozens of downtown businesses have already closed, in part due to the homeless crisis. Now, many business owners are wishing that this plan had come a lot sooner. When walking downtown Portland, it's hard not to notice the empty storefronts and for lease signs at nearly every corner.
It's going to be a very long process to recover from this.
Some describe it as a slow deterioration, one of the many side effects of the city's homeless crisis.
The closer you get to Old Town, the worse it is.
Todd Gooding runs Scanlon Kemper Bard Companies, which owns 5 commercial buildings downtown. In recent months, they've lost tenants and are now in the process of selling 2 buildings, all due to safety concerns.
We've had multiple assaults. Basically, from Pioneer Square north, it's pretty rough still.
Last week, Mayor Ted Wheeler announced a 5-part plan to address this crisis head-on. It includes banning camping over an 18-month period and building 3 giant homeless campuses instead. It calls for 20,000 affordable housing units by 2033 and changes to city protocols so the homeless can easily access addiction and mental health services and get jobs.
I think it's a step in the right direction. I hope he goes all the way and outlaws camping on the streets.
I live in Portland. I like Portland. I'd love it to be back to where it was.
This is Tim Boyle, the president and CEO of Columbia Sportswear, which has also been negatively impacted by this crisis. He's now moving the Sorel Shoe and Clothing division out of downtown and into Washington County.
We're trying to attract people to come to work for the company. And Portland was a net positive in many, many ways for years. It's now a net negative.
Do you have faith in city government that they can pull off a plan of this magnitude?
I'm anxious to see some action. There's been lots of discussion on the topic, as you know. Most of these issues are as a result of lack of funding. This is not the case here. There is an enormous amount of money available for this topic, and we haven't seen any action.
Today, the mayor is in LA to see how they deal with homelessness. Now, on Wednesday, he'll present his plan to City Council. That meeting is open to the public. You just have to register. Blair Best, KGW News.
Well, before Blair even finished putting that story together, we had a few more questions we wanted to add to our list, including what other feedback she has heard from businesses and Portlanders. Is there optimism about this plan? Is this time potentially different? And also, it really stuck out to hear Tim Boyle there call Portland a, quote, net negative. So we asked Blair if that is a theme she hears often.
Joining you from inside the news car here, trying to stay dry from all this rain. You asked, since the plan was introduced on Friday, what other feedback have I received? Has it been optimistic or this feeling of here we go again? And I think it's safe to say that for those who know about the plan, that they are optimistic. They're happy to see some urgency coming from City Hall when it comes to the homeless crisis. I think right now it's a waiting game to see how will this be implemented. Where will these large campuses actually be located? Who will it be impacting? How will it be enforced? And ultimately, what will the results of this be? And will it happen quickly or will it be years from now? So I think, it's just a waiting game, and business owners are just hopeful and hoping that the city can pull it off. You commented on Tim Boyle calling Portland net negative as it pertains to the homeless crisis, and you asked if that's a theme that I hear in my reporting. And yeah, I would say it is. When talking to local businesses, it is nearly impossible not to talk about the homeless crisis or safety concerns facing their employees. I mean, so many businesses are just struggling to stay afloat with the amount of money they have to spend on repairing things like graffiti and vandalism. So, no, I wasn't surprised when I heard Tim Boyle call Portland net negative as it pertains to the homeless crisis.
Still to come on The Story, the race for Oregon governor shaping up to be a nail-biter as a new poll confirms what we have been seeing for weeks, a contest that's neck and neck. We're highlighting the latest numbers and taking a close look at the most expensive governor's race in Oregon history, including a donation from Nike that flies in the face of Phil Knight's recent contributions. That's next, when The Story continues.
All right, here we go into the last few miles of this marathon here. Election Day is 2 weeks from tomorrow, which means ballots should be showing up in your mailbox if they have not already. And let's face it, in this midterm election year, there are some significant races, with one arguably standing out among the rest, in part because of the stakes for Oregon and how tight it is. Yes, the contest for Oregon governor has it all, record-setting amounts of money, and not two, but three experienced candidates, with political watchers pointing out the status quo of a mostly blue Oregon for nearly 4 decades, now facing a serious challenge. And as if the polls could get any tighter, let's bring you a new one. It shows Republican Christine Drazen at 43%, Democrat Tina Kotek 42%, essentially tied because that is within the 3% margin of error. Unaffiliated candidate Betsy Johnson down to 12% and just 2% undecided. Now, this poll was done by the group Data for Progress, that is a self-described progressive think tank and polling firm. So keep that in mind as you look at the numbers here. The late Len Bergstein, KGW's political analyst, told me before he passed away last week, he'd love to be here for this election, by the way, we have to take all these polls with a grain of salt because some do not model who will actually turn out very well at all. So in this case, the poll surveyed just over 1,000 likely Oregon voters about a week ago, online and through text. I'm not sure how that works with text messaging, but I guess it's probably a yes, no, and they send it back and you pick a link or something like that. Anyway, that is the largest sample size for a governor's poll so far this campaign season. And now, as we just mentioned, Data for Progress leans to the left, so let's zoom out and take a wider look. 538 is one resource out there because it takes an average of all the polls done in the Oregon governor's race. They also take into account quality, how recent, the sample size, and, as we mentioned, partisan tilt there. So after this latest poll by Data for Progress, you can see on the end there, Christine Drazen holds just the slightest of leads in the race, according to 538, at just over 0.5%. So really, we are neck and neck, it appears, as we head to the home stretch, with people voting again as we speak. I filled mine out on Sunday. I think it went in the mail today. So let's take a look at the money now, where it is coming and going. We've told you before, it's kind of being tossed around in the race as if it is going out of style. More than $50 million, I think it's $55 million and counting, by these campaigns so far. And that number grew yet again over the weekend. Let's start here with Republican Christine Drazen. Her campaign is nearly $2.4 million in the bank, cash on hand right now. That's a big jump from what we saw last week, and most of that is because of big donations, including another $500,000 from the Republican Governors Association on Friday. Now, that is the fundraising arm of the GOP. So far this campaign season, they've given $5.2 million to Drazen. Let's look at Democrat Tina Kotek. Her campaign, about $2.1 million available. That's down quite a bit from last week, and there's one huge reason behind that, because on Friday, the campaign made its largest single expenditure, nearly $1.6 million, and that went to a political strategy firm called Canal Partners Media. And of course, that means more Kotek ads are on the way. In fact, the campaign's 3 largest outlays, all of them in October, have all gone to Canal for a total of more than $4.1 million. There's one other donation in Kotek's campaign records that is notable: $75,000 from Nike and affiliates. You see it at the bottom. That came in last Thursday. Of course, it is widely known that Nike co-founder Phil Knight donated $3.75 million to Betsy Johnson, and then $1 million to Christine Drazen earlier this month. Now, before we talk about Betsy Johnson's bookkeeping, or kind of as we get into it here, a reminder: her campaign records are about a week behind her competitors. We are working with the latest data we have, but keep in mind here, it's about 10 days old. So Johnson's got more than $1.6 million on hand. Some recent notable numbers: she got $100,000 from Swikart Auto Group and the same amount from Sauce Brothers back on October 14th. Her last big campaign spend, according again to the data that we have, it is dated, was back on October 11th, when she spent a combined $720,000 on advertising and political strategy groups. All right, so in a way, the candidates' spending appear to be mirroring what we see in the polls. Drazen and Kotek really neck and neck. They're getting big money from national donors, and they're spending it in a very big way. Johnson's campaign trails. She doesn't have those big national donors to lean on outside of Phil Knight, who, depending on your take on his latest donation there, appears to be backing Drazen. Johnson also not spending nearly as much on advertising lately to try to get that message out. Let's talk about your message, though. Do you agree with what we're seeing in recent polls? Why or why not? How about the big spending? Should candidates be doing something differently at this stage of the race? Well, let us know. Email the story at kgw.com or leave us a voicemail. I got to say, the team here really loves listening to your voicemails. It's a nice break. That's at 503-226-5090. We are just getting this week going on the story. Speaking of Monday, that's when we usually let you know what you missed over the weekend. Though this Monday, we're making a different kind of promise. No negative news. You heard me. It was a fantastic weekend for sports teams and their fans across Oregon, from soccer to college football to the NBA. Yeah, we all needed this boost, and it is headed your way right after this. Welcome back. It's Monday, and you know our Monday tradition here at The Story. No, not more coffee, but a look back over the weekend. And when Pat is here, the team doesn't often cover sports. So let me tell you, he can run, he can swim, and who knows what with the best of them. But I digress, because over the past few days, Oregon sports teams had a weekend like no other, one that is definitely worth celebrating. So here's a look at what you might have missed.
The Thorns faithful showing love to the players as they arrive for the big semifinal match.
I hope they can feel it, because it's a lot that they've been through and that this whole community's been through, and I hope they feel the love.
That enthusiasm carried over to game time. The atmosphere inside the stadium electric, with a trip to the National Women's Soccer League Championship on the line. What is clear is that Sunday was all about supporting the players on the pitch, and it paid off. The Thorns' Crystal Dunn putting one in the back of the net with mere minutes left in regulation.
Toga! 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 Where's the toga, Art?
Man, I'm not wearing a toga. No.
Okay, well, there was a party in Eugene, Art. The University of Oregon in the national spotlight. Fans lined up overnight and brought that energy as ESPN's College Game Day went on the air at 6 a.m. That was just the beginning, man. Oregon made it look easy, playing some of its best ball of the season, chalking up 545 yards of offense, handing UCLA its first loss. Final score 45-30. The Ducks take over first place in the Pac-12 Conference, improving to 6-1 on the season. Do you want to dance?
Nobody wants to see that.
Oh, the Beavers not only won, but they left no doubt against Colorado. Our viewers were complaining we need to talk about the OSU tight ends. Well, here you go. Jack Bellin, true freshman, 60-yard touchdown from Ben Goldbridson. Less than 30 seconds left. Blazers down 1. Nurk called for a foul. Blazers challenge the call. It's reversed. Portland keeps the ball. That set the stage for Damian Lillard. Tap those wrists, folks. The step back 3 under 15 seconds to play. Oh, you know what time it is. Dame had 41. Blazers up 104-102. That is iconic.
You know you make me wanna kick my
Oh, yeah. I know it. Even Joey Harrington is wearing a toga. Where is your toga, Art?
Not wearing one.
You know, he totally wore that home, didn't he? They're playing the Denver Nuggets tonight. All right, don't forget our free newsletter. It is a great way to catch up on Monday. Scan the QR code. It'll send you a link to sign up. You get an email from the team at the beginning of the week where we highlight our biggest stories. Orlando in a toga. No, it's all the highlights over the last week. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. We're going to finish the show right after this. All right, for our Hey Help profile this week, we are talking about the KGW Great Toy Drive. Yeah, we're a week shy of Halloween, but last year, with your help, we donated over 30,000 toys to local kids. And this year, we are raising that bar. Head to kgw.com/toy to sign up. We will send you a collection kit, and you can help collect toys for local families. A very special shout out tonight to Green Zebra in Southeast Portland for being one of the first to hop on board the holiday train. Speaking of Halloween, better get working on that costume. I'm talking to myself here, and Laurel knows this, but trick or treat, I like dark chocolate, Milky Way too. She's up next with your headlines. The news at 6:30 starts right now.